The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Claire Whitmore lay on the narrow bed, her hands clenched in the thin cotton sheets as another wave of pain rolled through her body. The digital clock on the wall blinked 6:12 a.m., her delivery day. The day she had circled on the calendar for months, the day she had survived injections, hormones, tears, and silence for. Her phone lay beside her pillow, silent. She reached for it again, even though she already knew what she would see. No missed calls, no new messages, just the same unanswered text she had sent an hour earlier. "I'm being admitted. Please call me." Outside the window, the city was waking up. Ambulance sirens in the distance, early sunlight creeping between Manhattan buildings, life moving forward, indifferent to the fact that hers felt like it was standing on a cliff. A nurse adjusted the IV and offered a practiced smile. "Your husband should be here soon?" Claire nodded automatically. It was easier than explaining. What she didn't say was that her husband, Nathan Crowell, had boarded a plane 12 hours earlier. She didn't say that while she sat alone in a hospital gown, he was waking up somewhere near the ocean, white sheets, filtered sunlight, and a woman who wasn't his wife beside him. She had seen the photo by accident, an Instagram story that vanished after 15 seconds, a glass of champagne, a balcony railing, a familiar male hand wearing the watch she had bought Nathan on their anniversary. No faces, no names. But Claire knew. Her stomach tightened, and this time it wasn't from labor. Another contraction hit harder. She gasped, her body curling inward, instinctively protecting the life inside her. "It's okay," she whispered to her belly, voice trembling. "Mom's here. I'm here." But the truth was cruelly simple. She was alone. Her phone finally buzzed. For half a second, relief flooded her chest so fast it almost hurt. She grabbed it, fingers shaking. Not Nathan. A notification from her insurance app. "Coverage update. Your plan has been modified." Claire frowned, blinking through sweat and confusion. Modified? Today? Her heart began to pound, a warning drum she couldn't silence. She tried to open the details, but another contraction stole her breath before she could read further. Across town, at a luxury coastal resort hours away, Nathan Crowell silenced his iPhone and dropped it face down on the nightstand. He told himself it was necessary. That this weekend was his last chance to breathe. That Claire would understand. She always did. He had no idea that while he slept, his wife's blood pressure was climbing to dangerous levels. He had no idea doctors were already whispering words like emergency and risk. He had no idea that his absence was about to become irreversible. Back in the hospital room, the monitor beside Claire began to beep faster. A nurse's expression changed, just slightly, but enough for Claire to notice. "Claire," the nurse said gently, reaching for the call button. "I need you to stay with me, okay?" Claire nodded, tears slipping silently into her hairline. She stared at her phone one last time and whispered, "Please, just answer." He didn't, and somewhere between that unanswered call and the next contraction, Claire felt it with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just the day she would give birth. This was the day her life would split in two. Nathan Crowell woke to the sound of waves instead of alarms. Sunlight spilled through sheer white curtains, painting the luxury hotel room in soft gold. The air smelled like sea salt and expensive citrus soap. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he turned his head and saw Brielle Knox stretched beside him, her hair fanned across a pillow that probably cost more than the crib he still hadn't finished assembling at home. She smiled sleepily. "Morning," she said, her voice warm, unburdened. Nathan reached for his phone out of habit, then stopped. He remembered why he had silenced it. No meetings, no hospital updates, no responsibility clawing at his chest. This trip was supposed to be a reset, just 2 days. That's what he told himself. "Did she text?" Brielle asked casually, as if she were asking about the weather. Nathan exhaled and shrugged. "She'll be fine. Doctors do this every day." Brielle rolled onto her side, tracing a lazy line along his arm. "You can't carry everyone's stress, Nate. You deserve this." He wanted to believe her. He needed to. Hours earlier, as he boarded the flight, he had typed out a message to Claire. Something reassuring. Something vague. He deleted it 3 times before settling on, "I'll be back before anything serious happens." It sounded responsible enough. He hit send and never looked back. Now, standing on the balcony with a mug of fresh coffee, Nathan stared at the endless blue horizon. Somewhere far away, his wife was in a hospital bed. Somewhere far away, his child was about to enter the world. The distance made it easier to breathe. Brielle was already dressed, scrolling through her phone, careful to keep her camera angled just right. She snapped a photo of the ocean, the breakfast tray, the edge of Nathan's watch peeking into frame. She didn't tag him. She didn't have to. Nathan noticed the familiar buzz in his pocket. He glanced at his phone. Missed calls. Several. Unknown number. Hospital area code. His jaw tightened. He flipped the phone face down again. "Bad timing?" Brielle asked, raising an eyebrow. "Work stuff," he lied. "Always something." She stepped closer, looping her arm through his. "Not today. Today is ours." He nodded, even as something heavy pressed against his ribs. He told himself that panic wouldn't help anyone, that Claire was strong, that money covered everything important, that he would show up later and smooth things over like he always did. What Nathan didn't know was that, back in Manhattan, a nurse was already flagging his wife's chart. He didn't know that Claire's blood pressure was climbing fast, or that her insurance plan had been downgraded without her knowledge 2 weeks earlier under his login. He didn't know that doctors were preparing for an emergency that required immediate consent. And he didn't know that every second he chose the ocean over the hospital was quietly sealing his fate. As Brielle pulled him toward the door, Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time he hesitated, just long enough for the screen to light up with a name he couldn't ignore. "Dr. Samuel Reed?" Nathan stared at it, his pulse suddenly loud in his ears. Then the phone stopped ringing. Claire had always believed hospitals were places of control. Bright lights, clean lines. Machines that beeped in predictable rhythms. For years, working behind the scenes in medical billing, she had trusted systems, codes, approvals. She believed that if you followed the rules, things worked. That belief began to crack the moment the charge nurse returned with a tablet in her hands and a careful expression on her face. "Claire," she said softly, lowering her voice, "there's an issue with your insurance authorization." Claire blinked, sweat dampening her hairline. "What kind of issue?" "The plan on file doesn't cover the procedure level you're being admitted under." The words didn't land at first. Her mind was busy riding the sharp edge of another contraction. "That's not possible," she said when she could breathe again. "My husband handles the plan. It's full coverage. We checked." The nurse nodded too quickly. "I just need a signature to escalate." A signature. Claire laughed weakly, the sound catching in her throat. "My hands are shaking. Can you just call him?" They already had. In the hallway, voices gathered. A doctor, another nurse. The low, urgent murmur that meant something was changing. Claire stared at the ceiling tiles, counting cracks, fighting the rising panic that pressed against her lungs. Her phone was still silent. Minutes stretched in unnatural ways. Time didn't move forward. It pooled. It suffocated. Dr. Samuel Reed entered the room with calm authority, his eyes scanning the monitors before landing on Claire's face. "Your blood pressure is climbing," he said plainly, "and the baby's heart rate is dipping." Claire swallowed. "Is my baby okay?" "We're watching closely," he said, "but we may need to act fast." The word may felt like a threat. Another contraction tore through her, stronger than the last. Claire cried out, gripping the rail. Tears blurred her vision as fear finally broke through the discipline she had trained into herself for years. "I need my husband," she whispered, shame burning her cheeks. Dr. Reed didn't judge her. He simply nodded and turned away, already dialing again. Outside the room, a nurse whispered, "He's not answering." Inside, Claire's world narrowed to breath and pain, and the cold realization that she had trusted the wrong person to hold the most important responsibility of her life. Her mind flickered backward. Nathan insisting on optimizing their insurance costs. Nathan asking for her login just to review options. Nathan saying, "Trust me," in that confident voice that had slowly replaced her own. Another alarm chirped. This time, the tone was different. Dr. Reed returned quickly. "Claire," he said, steady but firm, "we're moving you to surgery prep." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Is my baby?" "We're doing everything we can." They began unhooking monitors, rolling her bed forward. The room blurred into motion. Ceiling lights streaked overhead as she was pushed down the corridor. As they passed the nurse's station, Claire caught sight of her reflection in a glass panel. Pale, vulnerable, alone. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers and opened the voice recorder. Her voice came out thin but determined. "If you ever hear this," she whispered, tears slipping sideways into her ears, "know that I fought for you. Even when I was scared." The orderly pushed the doors open, and somewhere far away, a phone began to ring again. The phone rang again and again. Nathan Crowell stood in the hotel bathroom, staring at his reflection while the vibration rattled against the marble countertop. The mirror showed a man who looked calm, rested, in control. It didn't show the faint tension tightening his jaw or the unease creeping up his spine. He let it ring out. When the screen finally went dark, silence rushed back in, thick and artificial. He exhaled slowly, as if ignoring the call had required physical effort. "You're going to answer that eventually, right?" Brielle's voice drifted in from the bedroom. Light, careless. Nathan splashed cold water on his face. "Later," he said. "If I answer now, it'll turn into chaos." He told himself that was logical. He always had. Problems expanded the moment you gave them attention. Better to delay, to manage, to step in once emotions settled. Claire cried easily under stress. Doctors exaggerated risks. Everything always sounded worse in the moment. That's what he told himself as he walked back into the room and pulled on his shirt. Brielle watched him from the bed, one eyebrow lifted. "You're shaking." "I'm not," he snapped, too quickly. She stood and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "Hey, you came here to breathe, remember?" Nathan nodded, though the word breathe suddenly felt ironic. His chest felt tight, like the air had thinned. They went downstairs to breakfast overlooking the water, white tablecloths, polished silverware. A violinist played something soft and forgettable. Nathan ordered without looking at the menu. Muscle memory, control. His phone buzzed again. This time he didn't flip it over. He glanced down and saw the hospital number once more. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. Brielle noticed. "Is it that serious?" Nathan forced a small laugh. "Hospitals call for everything. Paperwork, updates. They panic." "You're not worried?" she asked. He hesitated, then shook his head. "Claire's strong. She always lands on her feet." The words tasted wrong the moment he said them, but he swallowed them anyway. Back in Manhattan, Claire was being wheeled through sterile hallways, the world rushing past in fragments. Voices, doors, lights. Her body trembled, not just from pain, but from the realization that Nathan had made a choice. Not a mistake. A choice. Dr. Reed stepped aside near the operating room doors and tried Nathan again. Straight to voicemail. His jaw tightened. "This can't wait," he muttered, already dialing another number, protocol replacing patience. At the resort, Nathan's phone vibrated again, longer this time. He stared at it as if it might burn him. Dr. Samuel Reed. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Several guests glanced over. Brielle frowned. "What is it?" Nathan stepped away, heart pounding now, no longer contained. He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. For the first time that morning, fear broke through his carefully stacked excuses. He thought of the unfinished crib, the insurance changes he'd made without explaining. The way Claire had looked at him the night before he left, like she was already saying goodbye. The ringing stopped. A second later, a voicemail notification appeared. Nathan's stomach dropped. Whatever was happening now, he knew with terrifying certainty, was no longer something he could control. The operating room was colder than Claire expected. Even through the haze of medication and fear, she noticed it immediately. The sharp chill against her skin, the brightness of the lights, the way every sound felt amplified. Metal trays clinked, gloves snapped, voices moved with trained urgency that left no room for comfort. "Claire, look at me," Dr. Samuel Reed said, his voice firm but grounding. "I need you to focus on your breathing." She tried. She really did. But her thoughts kept slipping away from her body and racing toward one unanswered question. Where is he? They draped the blue surgical sheet across her chest, blocking her view of everything below. She hated that. Hated not being able to see what was happening to her own body. Hated that the one person who was supposed to stand beside her wasn't there to hold her hand. "Your blood pressure is still climbing," a nurse said quietly. Dr. Reed nodded. "We're proceeding now." Claire felt tears slide into her ears, soaking her hair. She wanted to apologize for being difficult, for being scared, for needing more than she was allowed to ask for. "I didn't think I'd be alone," she whispered, the words barely audible. Dr. Reed paused for just a second. Not long enough to disrupt protocol, but long enough to matter. "You're not," he said. "We're here." But Claire knew the difference. In another place, miles away, Nathan Crowell stood frozen in a hotel hallway, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the voicemail he had been too afraid to answer in real time. "Mr. Crowell," Dr. Reed's voice said, clipped and professional. "Your wife has been taken into emergency surgery. There are complications. We need your immediate consent for potential interventions. Please call me back now." The message ended. Nathan stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. The world around him seemed suddenly unreal. The soft music drifting from the lounge, the laughter of strangers, the faint smell of sunscreen and coffee, none of it belonged anymore. Brielle stepped closer, concern etched across her face. "What's going on?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth felt too heavy to shape into words. They're doing surgery." Brielle's eyes widened. "Right now?" He nodded. "You should call back," she said, slower this time. Nathan hesitated. That instinct again. The one that told him once he stepped back into the chaos, there would be no retreat, no soft landing. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. Back in the operating room, Claire felt pressure, tugging, urgency she couldn't see. Her body shook as alarms chirped and voices sharpened. "Baby's heart rate is dropping," someone said. Claire squeezed her eyes shut. "Please," she whispered. "Please." Dr. Reed's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then at Claire. "Your husband is on the line," he said. Somewhere between fear and exhaustion, Claire felt something inside her harden. It wasn't relief. It was the understanding that whatever happened next would change everything. Nathan's voice sounded wrong to his own ears, too calm, too controlled. like he was negotiating a contract instead of listening to a doctor talk about his wife's life. "I'm on the line," he said, stepping farther down the hallway until the ocean view disappeared behind a concrete wall. "What's going on?" Dr. Samuel Reed didn't soften his tone. "Your wife is in emergency surgery. She's experiencing severe complications. We need consent for additional interventions if the bleeding worsens." Nathan closed his eyes. Bleeding. The word echoed too loudly. "Do whatever you have to do," he said quickly. Just fix it." There was a pause on the other end, not long, but deliberate. "Mr. Crowell," Dr. Reed continued, "there's more. The baby is showing signs of oxygen deprivation. We may need to make rapid decisions regarding transfusions and NICU protocols." Nathan swallowed. His hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles ached. Okay, I'm listening. "And there's an unexpected issue with the medical records," Dr. Reed added. "Your wife's insurance coverage was altered. We're working around it, but it's complicating timing." Nathan felt a flicker of irritation flare through his fear. "That can't be right. I adjusted the plan, but—" "You adjusted it?" Dr. Reed interrupted, not accusing, just clarifying. Nathan hesitated. "It was temporary. Cost optimization." Another pause. This one heavier. "We're also running emergency compatibility checks," Dr. Reed said. "There's a discrepancy in the IVF documentation related to biological matching." Nathan's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," Dr. Reed said carefully, "that we need to verify paternity for medical reasons. Blood type indicators are not aligning as expected." The hallway seemed to tilt. Nathan pressed his shoulder against the wall, suddenly aware of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. "That's impossible," he said. "I'm the father." "We'll confirm," Dr. Reed replied. "Right now, my priority is saving both patients. I need your verbal consent to proceed with all necessary measures." Nathan nodded, even though the doctor couldn't see him. "Yes. You have it. All of it." The call ended. Nathan stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, long after the line went dead. Behind him, Brielle approached slowly, her heels clicking softly against the tile. "What did they say?" she asked, her voice lower now, stripped of its earlier confidence. "They're operating," he said flatly. "And the baby—" He didn't answer right away. Something inside him had fractured, not broken cleanly, but splintered. A sharp spreading crack that made every thought feel dangerous. "Did you know?" Brielle asked suddenly. Nathan turned to her. "Know what?" She hesitated. "About the insurance. About the IVF stuff." His silence was answer enough. Brielle stepped back, her face tightening as understanding dawned. "Nathan," she whispered, "what did you do?" Miles away, under blinding surgical lights, Claire drifted in and out of consciousness. She heard voices calling her name, felt pressure, urgency, hands moving fast. Her body was fighting. So was her baby. As a nurse announced blood loss numbers and Dr. Reed issued rapid instructions, one truth settled heavily into the room. Whatever Nathan had done before this moment no longer mattered. The consequences had arrived. And there would be no undoing them. Time fractured the moment Nathan ended the call. He stood motionless in the hallway, phone limp in his hand, as if gravity itself had shifted. The ocean outside was still there, calm and endless, but it felt like a lie now. A painted backdrop behind a life that was quietly imploding. Brielle watched him closely, not touching, not speaking. She had learned in moments like this that silence revealed more than questions ever could. "They said there was a problem," Nathan finally muttered, more to himself than to her. "With the records?" Brielle's eyes narrowed. "What kind of problem?" He shook his head. "I don't know. They're checking things. Blood types, compatibility." The words sounded harmless when spoken aloud, stripped of the terror they carried underneath. But Brielle felt it. The shift. The way Nathan's confidence had drained, leaving something raw and uncertain in its place. "You said everything was handled," she said slowly. "You said this was all planned." Nathan didn't answer. His mind raced backward, replaying decisions he had justified too easily. The insurance downgrade, the fertility clinic paperwork he'd rushed through without explaining. The afternoon he'd told Claire not to worry, that he would take care of it. He had meant control, he had meant efficiency, he had never meant consequences. His phone vibrated again, a text message this time. "Unknown number. NICU update pending. Please remain available." His chest tightened. NICU. The word slammed into him harder than anything Dr. Reed had said. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was real. This was happening without him. "I have to go back," he said suddenly. Brielle blinked. "Back? Nathan, you can't just leave. Flights—" "I don't care," he snapped, running a hand through his hair. "I shouldn't have come." The admission hung between them, sharp and irreversible. Brielle's expression hardened. "So what am I then?" she asked quietly. "A distraction?" He didn't look at her. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this." She laughed once, short and bitter. "It never does." Back in Manhattan, the operating room doors finally opened. A nurse stepped out, removing her mask as Dr. Reed followed behind her. His shoulders sagged just slightly, the weight of the last hour etched into his face. "Baby's alive," the nurse said to the team waiting outside. "Transferred to NICU." A fragile breath of relief passed through the hallway. Claire was still unconscious, pale beneath blankets, machines breathing rhythmically for her. Dr. Reed stood at her bedside for a moment longer than protocol required, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. "She fought hard," he murmured to no one in particular. In the NICU, a tiny body lay surrounded by wires and soft beeping monitors. A nurse adjusted a tube and whispered encouragement as if the baby could hear her. "This little one has a strong heartbeat," she said gently. Miles away, Nathan stared at his phone, waiting for news he was no longer sure he deserved. For the first time in his life, he understood something with terrifying clarity. Control was an illusion, and the bill for his choices had just come due. Claire woke to silence that felt too heavy to belong in a hospital. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, each movement deliberate, as if her body needed permission to exist again. The first thing she noticed was the ceiling, white, cracked faintly near a corner tile. The second was the ache, deep, everywhere. A pain that wasn't sharp but vast, like something had been taken from her and hadn't fully returned. She tried to move her hand. A soft beep responded. A nurse appeared at her side almost instantly. "Easy, Claire. You're in recovery." Claire swallowed. Her throat burned. "My baby." The nurse didn't answer right away, and that pause told Claire everything before words ever could. "He's alive," the nurse said carefully. "He's in the NICU. He needs support, but he's stable for now." A sob tore out of Claire before she could stop it. Relief and terror crashed together inside her chest, leaving her breathless. "Can I see him?" "Soon," the nurse said gently. "But you need to rest first." Claire nodded, though rest felt impossible. Her mind was already racing ahead, piecing together fragments of memory. The operating room, the alarms, the fear, and then, like a bruise pressed too hard, the absence. Did my husband come?" she asked, already bracing herself. The nurse's eyes softened. "He called," she said. "The doctor spoke with him. Called, not came." Claire closed her eyes. That single word settled heavier than any diagnosis. He had been reachable. He had known. And still, he wasn't here. In another wing of the hospital, Dr. Samuel Reed stood by a glass wall, staring into the NICU. The baby was impossibly small, wrapped in wires and clear tubing, chest fluttering beneath the steady rhythm of machines. The medical chart rested open in his hands. He frowned. Blood type results. IVF documentation, timeline inconsistencies. None of it made sense. And in medicine, when things didn't make sense, it usually meant something important was missing. "Run the paternity compatibility again," he told the nurse beside him. "Quietly." At the resort, Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed now, staring at his suitcase like it belonged to someone else. Brielle stood near the window, arms crossed. "They won't let me on the next flight," he said. "Everything's booked." Brielle didn't respond. He checked his phone again. No new updates, no photos, no messages from Claire. Just a sterile text from the hospital system confirming NICU admission. "She hasn't asked for me," he muttered, the realization stinging more than he expected. Brielle finally turned to him. "Maybe she's done asking." Nathan flinched. Back in recovery, Claire stared at the IV line taped to her arm. She felt emptied out, physically and emotionally, like something sacred had been broken open. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers and opened the voice recording she'd made earlier. Her own voice played back, shaky but resolute. "I fought for you." Tears slid silently down her temples. She didn't know yet that another fight was beginning, one that would expose lies she had never suspected, one that would take everything Nathan thought he controlled and strip it bare. For now, all Claire knew was this: she had survived. Her baby was breathing, and the door Nathan had failed to walk through might never open again. The NICU doors opened with a soft hiss, and Claire felt her heart lurch. She was wheeled in slowly, every movement still painful, every breath a reminder of how close she had come to disappearing. The room was dimmer than the rest of the hospital, lit with gentle blue and white glows from monitors and incubators. It felt like a place suspended outside time, where hope and fear existed side by side. "There he is," the nurse whispered, guiding her closer. Claire's baby lay inside the incubator, impossibly small, his chest rising and falling beneath a web of thin tubes and sensors. His skin looked almost translucent, fragile, real. "Oh my God," Claire breathed. Tears spilled freely now, soaking into the hospital gown she hadn't changed yet. She reached through the opening and touched his tiny hand with one finger. He curled around it weakly, the smallest grip she had ever felt, but it shattered her completely. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Behind the glass wall, Dr. Samuel Reed watched the interaction in silence. He had delivered hundreds of babies, seen countless reunions like this, but something about Claire's stillness caught his attention. The way she didn't speak loudly, the way she didn't ask questions yet, as if some deeper instinct was telling her to wait. When the nurse finished adjusting the monitors, Dr. Reed approached. "Claire," he said gently, "there are a few things we need to talk about when you're ready." She nodded without looking away from her son. "Tell me now." Dr. Reed hesitated, then gestured toward a quiet corner of the room. "Your baby required a transfusion protocol consideration," he explained. "That's what triggered the additional compatibility tests." Claire frowned. "Compatibility with me?" "With both parents," he said carefully. Her hand stilled. "There's an inconsistency," Dr. Reed continued. "Your blood type and the presumed paternal blood type don't align with the baby's results." Claire finally looked up at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied, choosing each word with precision, "that medically we need to verify biological paternity." The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible," Claire said immediately. "I didn't cheat, ever." Dr. Reed met her gaze, steady and calm. "I'm not suggesting you did." The relief and confusion collided inside her chest. Then how? There are rare scenarios, he said. Errors, mislabeling, documentation issues, especially involving IVF. Claire's mind raced backward, snapping onto memories she had dismissed at the time. Nathan insisting on handling clinic coordination. Nathan rushing her through consent forms. Nathan saying, "It's just paperwork. Trust me." Her stomach dropped. At that same moment, hundreds of miles away, Nathan sat alone in an airport terminal, flight delays blinking across the screen. He stared at the hospital message on his phone, jaw clenched. Another alert appeared. Hospital system. Additional testing in progress. Results pending. His pulse spiked. For the first time, fear wasn't about losing control or reputation. It was about losing the story he had built his life on. Back in the NICU, Claire pressed her palm to the glass, staring at her son. Her voice came out steady, but her eyes burned. "Do the test," she said. "I want the truth." Dr. Reed nodded. "We already started." As he walked away, Claire whispered something so quietly only she could hear it. "If someone lied," she said, "it wasn't me." The waiting was worse than the pain. Claire sat in the narrow chair beside the incubator, her body aching in ways medication couldn't touch. Every beep from the monitor felt louder now, sharper, like time itself was tapping its fingers against her spine. Her son slept fitfully, his tiny chest fluttering beneath the soft blue glow. She hadn't cried since Dr. Reed explained the tests. Something in her had gone very still. Across the city, Nathan finally made it onto a late flight, his leg bouncing uncontrollably as the plane taxied. He stared at his phone, refreshing the hospital portal again and again, as if force of will could change what was coming. Brielle's last message sat unanswered. "This isn't what you promised." He didn't know how to respond. For the first time, there was no version of events where he came out clean. Back in the NICU, Dr. Samuel Reed returned with a thin folder tucked under his arm. His face was neutral, but his eyes carried the kind of gravity that made Claire's stomach drop before he spoke. "Claire," he said quietly, "we have the preliminary results." Her hands tightened around the edge of the chair. "Just tell me." Dr. Reed nodded. "The rapid screening indicates that your husband is not the biological father." The words landed softly, almost politely. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. No monitors, no distant footsteps, just a rushing emptiness where certainty used to live. "I didn't cheat," she said immediately, her voice steady but thin. "I know," Dr. Reed replied. "The results don't suggest infidelity on your part. They suggest a discrepancy during the IVF process." Claire closed her eyes. Images flashed through her mind in brutal clarity. Nathan insisting on signing forms. Nathan waving away her questions. Nathan saying, "It's complicated. Let me handle it." Trust, handed over one piece at a time. "What happens now?" she asked. "We'll run confirmatory testing," Dr. Reed said. "But medically, this explains some of the complications we saw. I'm sorry you're finding out like this." Sorry didn't touch it. Claire looked at her son again. He stirred slightly, his fingers curling, alive and real and innocent. Whatever had happened, whatever Nathan had done, this child was hers, completely, undeniably. Across the country, Nathan's phone buzzed as the plane reached cruising altitude. "Hospital system. Preliminary results available. Please contact physician." His heart pounded as he connected to the call. Dr. Reed didn't waste time. He explained the findings calmly, professionally, without judgment. Nathan listened in stunned silence, the words stacking up like bricks on his chest. "That's impossible," Nathan whispered when the call ended. "I did everything right." But even as he said it, another voice inside him spoke up. "No, you didn't." Back in the NICU, Claire straightened her shoulders. The shock was still there, sharp and raw, but something else was rising beneath it. Clarity. If Nathan had altered her insurance, managed her medical choices, and interfered with something as sacred as bringing life into the world, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was a line crossed that could never be erased. Claire reached through the incubator opening and held her son's hand again. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise." And for the first time since everything began to fall apart, she believed it. Claire didn't sleep that night. The hospital room dimmed, lights lowered, machines humming softly like they were trying not to intrude. But her mind refused to quiet. Every time she closed her eyes, fragments replayed themselves, no longer random, no longer harmless. Nathan's confidence, Nathan's impatience. Nathan saying, "I'll handle it," as if control were the same as care. She sat up slowly, ignoring the ache in her abdomen, and reached for her phone. It felt different in her hand now. Less like a lifeline, more like a tool. The IVF clinic's patient portal took a moment to load. Her login still worked. Nathan had never bothered to change it. He never imagined she would need to look back. She scrolled through appointment summaries, consent forms, billing statements. Most of it was familiar, dull, clinical. But then she saw it, an amendment dated 3 weeks before implantation. Claire frowned and zoomed in, her pulse quickening. The document referenced sample handling authorization and an adjustment to the processing timeline. Her name was printed neatly at the bottom. The signature wasn't hers. It was close enough to fool someone who wasn't looking, close enough for a system that trusted paperwork more than people. But Claire had signed her name the same way since she was 16. This wasn't it. Her breath caught. She scrolled further. Another note. Internal, not meant for patient view. Per request from Mr. Nathan Crowell. Documentation expedited. Claire stared at the screen until the words blurred. He hadn't just taken control of the insurance. He hadn't just managed appointments. He had stepped into a space that should have been shared, equal, sacred, and rewritten it without her knowledge. A knock at the door pulled her back. Dr. Samuel Reed entered quietly. "You're awake," he said. "I found something," Claire replied, holding up her phone. Her voice didn't shake. That scared her more than tears would have. Dr. Reed read the screen, his expression tightening. "This shouldn't have been altered without your explicit consent." "But it was," Claire said, "because he knew I trusted him." Dr. Reed nodded slowly. "I'm obligated to report irregularities like this, especially now." Claire looked toward the window, the city lights distant and indifferent. "Do it." There was no hesitation in her voice. Across the country, Nathan sat in his dark apartment, the silence finally catching up to him. He replayed the call with Dr. Reed again and again, clinging to the hope that confirmatory tests would somehow erase what he'd heard. His phone buzzed. Not the hospital. Work email. "Meeting request. Immediate. Subject. Compliance concern." His chest tightened. Then another message arrived. Unknown number. "We need to talk. Now." Brielle Nathan dropped the phone onto the couch. For the first time, every version of the future he had assumed was waiting for him dissolved at once. No smooth explanation, no clever pivot, no way to put the story back together. Back in the hospital, Claire stood with assistance for the first time since surgery. The pain was sharp, grounding, proof she was still here. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, pale, tired, but her eyes were clear. Whatever Nathan had done, he no longer controlled the narrative, and whatever came next would be built on truth, not silence. By the third day, Claire understood something clearly. Pain faded faster than betrayal. Her body still ached when she stood, and every step pulled at the stitches beneath her hospital gown, but her mind had sharpened. The fog of medication and shock had lifted just enough to let anger settle into something colder and more useful. Evidence. She sat at the small table by the window with her laptop open, scrolling through files she had downloaded from the clinic portal. Timestamps, authorization logs, IP addresses, the boring, undeniable trail that systems always left behind. A soft knock came at the door. A woman in a charcoal blazer stepped inside, her posture confident, her eyes assessing the room in one quick sweep. "Claire Whitmore?" she asked. "Yes." "I'm Lena Brooks." She extended a hand. "Family law. Dr. Reed asked me to stop by." Claire studied her for a moment, then shook her hand. "Because of the paperwork." "Because of everything," Lena replied calmly, pulling a chair closer. "But yes, the paperwork is troubling." Claire slid the laptop toward her without a word. Lena scanned the screen, her expression tightening as she read. "He changed insurance coverage without spousal consent. He altered IVF documentation. And he did it close enough to delivery that you were exposed to serious medical and financial risk." Claire swallowed. Hearing it laid out like that made the scale of it impossible to ignore. "Can he say it was a mistake?" Lena looked up sharply. "He can say whatever he wants. It doesn't mean anyone will believe him." In the NICU down the hall, a nurse adjusted Claire's baby's feeding tube. The monitors beeped steadily now, a rhythm that had become strangely comforting. Proof of life, proof of survival. "Here's the thing," Lena continued. "You're in a strong position. Medically. Legally. But only if you stop protecting him." Claire flinched, just slightly. "I know you've spent years smoothing things over," Lena said gently. "But right now, your silence only helps one person. And it's not your son." Claire looked toward the NICU window. She thought of the way Nathan had always stepped in front of her, making decisions sound like favors. She had called it partnership. She saw it clearly now for what it was. Control. "I don't want revenge," Claire said quietly. Lena nodded. "Good. Revenge burns fast. Accountability lasts longer." Across town, Nathan sat in a glass-walled conference room, his reflection multiplying around him. His boss, Evan Cole, sat across the table, fingers laced, expression unreadable. "We received an inquiry," Evan said, "from a hospital compliance department." Nathan's mouth went dry. "About what?" "Insurance manipulation," Evan replied, "and potential documentation fraud tied to your name." Nathan tried to speak. Nothing came out. Back in the hospital, Claire closed the laptop and met Lena's eyes. "What do I do first?" Lena smiled just slightly. "First, you stop calling him your husband. Second, you let the truth do what it does best." Claire exhaled slowly. For the first time since the delivery, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like something she might finally own. Claire was halfway through pumping milk when the nurse knocked. It was a small interruption, but it set something off in her chest, a familiar tightening that had nothing to do with pain. She glanced up, already sensing that this wasn't routine. "There's someone asking to see you," the nurse said carefully. "She says she's a friend of your husband." Claire closed her eyes. Not a friend, she thought. A consequence. "I didn't authorize visitors," Claire replied evenly. "I know," the nurse said. "That's why I checked first." Claire took a breath, then nodded once. "Give me a minute." By the time Brielle Knox stepped into the room, Claire was sitting upright, hospital robe tied neatly, her face calm in a way that wasn't natural. It was practiced. Brielle looked different without the ocean behind her. No filtered sunlight, no soft music, just harsh hospital lighting and the reality she hadn't curated. "I didn't mean to upset you," Brielle began immediately, her voice low. "I just thought we should talk, woman to woman." Claire gestured toward the chair. "Say what you came to say." Brielle hesitated before sitting. Nathan's falling apart, she said. Work, legal stuff. He didn't think things would spiral like this. Claire almost laughed. Almost. And you're here, Claire said slowly. Because? Brielle swallowed. Because this is getting bigger than any of us. There are rumors, screenshots. If this goes public, you're worried about your reputation, Claire finished for her. Brielle stiffened. I'm worried about all of us. Claire leaned back slightly, pain flaring. But her voice remained steady. You slept with a married man while his wife was carrying a high-risk pregnancy. I'm not sure us applies. Brielle's cheeks flushed. He told me you were distant, that you'd checked out, that the baby was complicated. Claire's gaze sharpened. Did he tell you he changed my insurance without my consent? Brielle blinked. What? Did he tell you he altered IVF documentation? Claire pressed. Or that my child nearly died while he was drinking champagne with you? Silence stretched between them. Brielle stood abruptly. I didn't know, I swear. Not knowing doesn't erase impact, Claire said quietly. Brielle's voice cracked. I just wanted him to choose me. Claire nodded once. And now you know what it feels like to be chosen by the wrong man. Brielle's eyes darted toward the door. What are you going to do? Claire held her gaze. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel. That's it? That's everything, Claire replied. In the hallway, Lena Brooks was already waiting. She had heard enough. Security escorted Brielle out without incident. That evening, Nathan's phone buzzed with missed calls from Brielle, then a single message. We're done. Don't contact me again. Minutes later, another notification arrived. From Lena Brooks. Formal separation documents have been filed. All communication should go through counsel. Nathan stared at the screen, chest hollow. Back in the NICU, Claire stood beside the incubator, watching her son breathe. The storm was finally moving outward, away from him. She rested her hand against the glass. I'm choosing you, she whispered. The conference room on the 32nd floor had always made Nathan feel invincible. Floor-to-ceiling glass revealed the Manhattan skyline, steel and ambition stretching in every direction. He had closed deals in this room, fired people in this room, promised futures he never intended to keep. Today, the room felt smaller, the air heavier. Nathan sat alone at one end of the table, his laptop closed, his hands folded tightly in front of him. Across from him were three people who weren't supposed to be on the same calendar invite. Evan Cole, the company's COO, calm and unreadable. A woman from compliance, legal pad open. And an HR director Nathan barely recognized. This meeting is informal, Evan began evenly. But it's serious. Nathan forced a nod. I assumed as much. The compliance officer slid a folder across the table. We received a formal inquiry from a Manhattan hospital regarding insurance manipulation tied to your employee benefits account. Nathan's throat tightened. That was a personal matter. Personal actions, she replied, that exposed the company to liability. Evan leaned back slightly. Nathan, did you alter your spouse's medical insurance coverage without her consent? Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it. Any answer felt like a trap. I was optimizing costs, he said finally. There was no intent to harm. The HR director's pen paused. Intent is not the standard. Another page was slid forward. We also received documentation indicating your involvement in irregular medical paperwork at an affiliated fertility clinic. Evan's gaze sharpened. Is that accurate? Nathan felt the room tilt. He had built his career on persuasion, on confidence, on making uncertainty sound like vision. None of it worked here. I didn't think, he started. That's the problem, Evan interrupted quietly. You didn't think beyond yourself. Silence fell. The skyline beyond the glass continued as if nothing inside this room mattered. "We're placing you on immediate administrative leave," Evan said. "Effective now. Your access to company systems will be suspended pending investigation." Nathan stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I am," Evan replied. "This isn't about optics. It's about ethics." Across town, Claire sat with Lena Brooks in a quiet hospital lounge, sunlight pooling across the floor. Lena ended a phone call and looked up. "That was Evan Cole," she said. "He wanted to confirm timelines, and to tell you, Nathan's been sidelined." Claire didn't react right away. She looked through the glass at her son sleeping, chest rising steadily now without assistance. Each breath felt like a quiet victory. "Good," she said finally. "I don't want him distracted." Lena studied her. "You're handling this better than most people would." Claire smiled faintly. "I spent years being told I was too emotional. Turns out I was just waiting for facts." Back in the conference room, Nathan gathered his things in silence. No one stopped him. No one offered reassurance. As he reached the door, Evan spoke again. "Nathan." He turned. "You had everything," Evan said, "and you treated it like leverage." The words landed harder than anger ever could. Nathan walked out without responding. That evening, he sat alone in his apartment, city lights flickering against the windows, and realized something he had never allowed himself to consider. Power didn't leave loudly. It simply stopped answering when you called. Claire learned quickly that strength didn't need volume. It needed timing. She sat at the small desk in her hospital room, laptop open, sunlight spilling across the keyboard. Her son slept in the NICU down the hall, finally breathing without assistance, his fragile body wrapped in quiet resilience. Every few hours she walked there, touched the glass, reminded herself why she couldn't afford to act on impulse. Lena Brooks sat across from her, flipping through neatly labeled folders. "We move slowly," she said. "That's what keeps this clean." Claire nodded. "I don't want chaos. I want closure." Lena smiled faintly. "Then you're doing this right." They reviewed documents together, medical records, insurance change logs, IVF clinic amendments, communication timestamps. Everything Nathan had assumed was invisible now lay arranged in careful order, each piece reinforcing the next. "You don't need to confront him," Lena said. "In fact, I recommend you don't." Claire thought about Nathan's voice, the way he always filled space, always redirected conversations back to his comfort. "He'd only try to control it," she said. Exactly. Across town, Nathan sat in his apartment staring at his phone, refreshing his email, his bank app, his messages. Silence pressed in from every direction. No calls from work, no updates from the hospital, no Brielle, no Claire. It was the absence that unsettled him most. He finally broke and texted Claire. "I know things are bad, but we need to talk. Please." The message showed, delivered. It stayed unanswered. Back in the hospital, Claire read the text once, then locked her phone and slid it face down on the desk. "I'm done explaining," she said quietly. Lena closed another folder. "Good, because the court doesn't need explanations, it needs facts." They filed emergency motions that afternoon. Temporary custody, medical decision authority, financial protection orders. Each document was precise, unemotional, and devastating in its clarity. Claire signed where Lena pointed, her hand steady. "This doesn't make you cruel," Lena said gently. "It makes you responsible." Later that evening, Claire stood alone in the NICU, the room dim except for the glow of monitors. She watched her son sleep, his fingers twitching occasionally, as if testing the world. "I didn't fight back before," she whispered, "but I am now." Miles away. Nathan's phone buzzed at last, not from Claire, from Lena Brooks. Formal notice. Temporary custody and medical authority filings submitted. Direct contact is no longer appropriate. Please communicate through counsel. Nathan read it twice, then a third time. His chest tightened, panic rising. He typed a reply, erased it, typed again. Nothing he wrote sounded right. Nothing he wrote gave him power back. Back at the hospital, Claire closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. For the first time since the delivery, her breathing felt natural, unforced. This wasn't revenge. This was preservation. And in the quiet space between one heartbeat and the next, Claire understood something that changed everything. You didn't need to shout to be heard. You just needed to stop protecting the person who was hurting you. Nathan had always believed consequences were negotiable. They were things you delayed, reframed, or redirected onto someone else. For years, that belief had served him well. Until now. The notice arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, slipped under his apartment door like an accusation that didn't need to knock. Official letterhead, legal language, no room for interpretation. Temporary orders granted. Nathan read the words again, his coffee cooling untouched on the counter. Temporary custody awarded to Claire Whitmore. Exclusive medical decision-making authority. Financial restrictions pending further review. His hands began to shake. He called his lawyer immediately, pacing the living room as the line rang. When she answered, her voice was calm, practiced, already distant. "This moved faster than expected," she said after he finished speaking. "The medical risk changes things. Judges don't like husbands who disappear during emergency deliveries." "I didn't disappear," Nathan snapped. "I was reachable." "You were unreachable when it mattered," she replied evenly. "There's a difference." At the hospital, Claire sat beside her son's crib in the step-down unit. The monitors quieter now, less urgent. His breathing was steadier, stronger. Each day, another tube removed, another small victory. Lena Brooks stood nearby, reviewing updates on her tablet. "The court moved exactly as we anticipated," she said. "Next comes the financial audit." Claire nodded. She felt tired, but it was the clean exhaustion of someone who had stopped fighting the wrong battles. "Will he fight this?" Claire asked. "Oh, absolutely," Lena said. "Men like Nathan always do. Not because they're right, because they can't stand losing control." As if summoned by the thought, Claire's phone buzzed. Nathan. She didn't answer. Back in his apartment, Nathan stared at the silence on his screen, anger curdling into something uglier. Fear, the kind that crept in slowly, whispering truths he had avoided. He checked his bank account. Restricted, not frozen, just limited. Enough to live, not enough to maneuver. At work, his badge no longer opened the elevator past the lobby. HR escorted him out politely, professionally, like he was already a memory. Evan Cole didn't come down to say goodbye. By evening, Nathan sat alone on his couch, city noise filtering through the windows. He replayed every choice, every moment he had said later instead of now. For the first time, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Back at the hospital, Claire held her son against her chest, skin to skin, feeling his warmth, his weight, his quiet insistence on life. The nurse smiled softly as she adjusted the blanket. "He's a fighter," she said. Claire kissed the top of his head. "So am I." Across town, Nathan's phone buzzed one last time that night. Not from Claire, from the court system. "Next hearing scheduled." Nathan leaned back, eyes closing, the full shape of his downfall finally clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't bad timing. This was cause and effect, unfolding exactly as it should. And for the first time in his life, Nathan understood something he could no longer escape. The consequences hadn't arrived to punish him. They had arrived to replace him. Claire first noticed Evan Cole the day her son was moved out of intensive care. He didn't arrive with flowers or sympathy. He arrived quietly, standing just inside the doorway of the step-down unit, hands in the pockets of his coat, eyes scanning the room as if he wanted to understand it before speaking. He looked out of place among the monitors and bassinets, but not uncomfortable. "Ms. Whitmore," he said gently, "I'm Evan Cole." Claire recognized the name immediately. Nathan's COO, the man whose approval Nathan had chased for years. She stiffened. "I'm not discussing my husband. I'm not here about him," Evan replied. "I'm here about you. And your child." Claire studied his face, searching for an angle. She found none, just exhaustion, and something else, resolve. They sat in the small family room down the hall. The hospital lights buzzed softly overhead. Evan folded his coat across his lap, posture respectful, deliberate. "I won't insult you by pretending this is easy to hear," he said. "Nathan's actions created serious ethical and legal exposure for our company, but more importantly, they put you at risk." Claire's jaw tightened. "He's very good at putting other people at risk." Evan nodded once. "I know. That's why I'm here." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were statements, internal emails, timelines, evidence of Nathan's misuse of company resources to manage personal matters, including the fertility clinic coordination. "This isn't generosity," Evan said quietly. "It's accountability. I've already turned this over to compliance and external counsel, but I wanted you to know you're not alone in this." Claire felt a surprising sting behind her eyes. Not relief, recognition. "Why help me?" she asked. Evan met her gaze. "Because I signed off on his promotion years ago, because I mistook ambition for integrity, and because your silence has been mistaken for weakness." Claire exhaled slowly. "I don't need favors," she said. "I'm not offering favors," Evan replied. "I'm offering facts and support where it's appropriate." In the hallway, Claire's son stirred, a soft sound that drew her attention instinctively. She stood, checking on him through the glass, then turned back. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Evan said, standing as well. "Nathan finishes what he started, alone." Across town, Nathan sat in a cramped office at his lawyer's firm, listening as his options narrowed by the minute. Every sentence began with "given the evidence" and ended with "limited." His phone buzzed, a notification from his company email. Access revoked. Nathan closed his eyes. Back at the hospital, Claire returned to her son's side, resting a hand on the warm curve of his back. Evan watched from a respectful distance, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "If you ever need a reference," he said, "or help re-entering the workforce when you're ready, call me." Claire looked up, surprised. "I will," she said. As Evan walked away, Claire realized something quietly powerful. The people who mattered were finally showing up, and they weren't asking for anything in return. Nathan saw Claire again for the first time in weeks at the courthouse. She stood near the windows of the waiting area, sunlight outlining her figure as she rocked her son gently in her arms. She looked thinner, stronger, like someone who had been forced through fire and learned how to breathe inside it. There was no anger on her face when she noticed him. No fear either. That unsettled him more than rage ever could. He approached slowly, stopping a few steps away. "Claire," he said, his voice low, careful. "Can we talk?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "You have 5 minutes." The words landed like a verdict. Nathan swallowed. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he began. "I thought I was helping, managing things." Claire adjusted the blanket around her son without looking at him. "You thought you were entitled," she replied calmly. He flinched. "I was under pressure, work, money, expectations." "Brielle, it was a mistake." "That's interesting," Claire said, "because mistakes usually involve regret before consequences." Nathan's hands trembled. I lost everything, he said quietly. My job, my reputation. I'm barely allowed to see him. He nodded toward the baby. Isn't that enough? Claire finally met his eyes. Hers were clear, exhausted, but clear. You didn't lose everything, she said. You lost control. The distinction hit him like a blow. I loved you, he said desperately. Claire's expression softened, just slightly, but her voice did not. You loved how safe I made your life feel. You loved that I didn't question you. She shifted her weight, pain flickering briefly across her face, then steadied herself again. I needed a partner. You needed an audience. Nathan's composure cracked. His shoulders slumped. Years of certainty collapsing inward. Tell me what to do, he whispered. I'll fix it. Claire looked down at her son, who stirred softly, unaware of the man unraveling in front of him. When she looked back up, her answer was gentle and final. There's nothing left for you to fix, she said. Only things for you to live with. A clerk called her name. Claire stepped past Nathan without another word, her shoulder brushing by him, light but decisive. He stood there, frozen, as if the building itself had shifted around him. In the courtroom, the judge listened patiently as Lena Brooks presented updated evidence. Financial misconduct, medical interference, clear patterns, Nathan's attorney argued, but the words sounded hollow even to Nathan. The ruling came swiftly. Supervised visitation, extended financial obligations. Continued investigation. Each sentence closed another door. As people filed out, Nathan remained seated, staring at the polished wood of the bench. For the first time in his life, there was no deal to negotiate, no angle left to play. Outside, Claire stepped into the afternoon light, her son sleeping peacefully against her chest. Lena smiled at her. You did well, she said. Claire exhaled, the weight finally lifting from her lungs. Across the plaza, Nathan watched from a distance, smaller now, diminished by the truth he could no longer outrun. This was the moment he finally understood. Some losses don't scream, they settle, and they stay. Nathan's apartment no longer felt like a place someone lived. It felt like a waiting room for a life that had already moved on. Boxes sat half-packed near the wall, not because he was organized, but because he didn't know where anything belonged anymore. The fridge hummed, nearly empty. His phone lay on the counter, face up, as if daring him to pick it up and discover there was still no one calling. The official letter arrived that afternoon. Not dramatic, not cruel, just final. The investigation had concluded. Termination of employment for cause. Forfeiture of deferred compensation. Mandatory cooperation with regulatory review. Nathan read it slowly, each line stripping away another layer of the identity he had wrapped himself in for years. Director, provider, man with options, all gone. Across the city, Brielle Knox stood in a very different kind of silence. Her phone, once alive with notifications, sat quiet on the marble countertop of a borrowed apartment. Brand emails had stopped replying. Event invitations dried up overnight. One by one, doors that had once opened easily now stayed closed. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, searching for the version of herself who believed she had won. You didn't choose me, she whispered to the empty room. You used me. There was no one left to argue with her. Back in a sunlit apartment overlooking a small park, Claire Whitmore rocked her son gently near the window. The space was modest, nothing like the life she once thought she needed, but it was calm, safe, hers. A framed court order sat neatly on the desk beside her laptop. Full custody, structured support, clear boundaries, no ambiguity. Her phone buzzed. A message from Evan Cole. HR approved the consulting role when you're ready, no rush. Family comes first. Claire smiled softly and set the phone down without replying yet. She wasn't in a hurry anymore. Later that evening, Nathan sat on a bench outside the supervised visitation center, watching parents come and go. Laughter, small arguments, normalcy. When his turn came, a staff member handed him his son for exactly 30 minutes. Nathan held the baby awkwardly at first, fear threading through him. The child smelled like soap and warmth and something painfully familiar. "I'm your dad," Nathan whispered, unsure if the words still meant anything. The baby yawned, indifferent. Across the room, Claire watched calmly, not intervening, not softening the rules. She wasn't cruel. She was finished pretending. When time was up, Nathan handed the baby back without protest. There was nothing left to negotiate. As he left the building, Nathan felt the weight of his choices fully settle. No speeches, no forgiveness arc. Just the quiet understanding that some damage couldn't be repaired, only acknowledged. That night, Claire placed her son gently into his crib and turned off the light. She stood there for a moment, listening to his steady breathing. She had lost a marriage, but she had gained something far greater. Her future no longer depended on someone else's permission, and for the first time, that felt like everything. 6 months later, spring softened the city. Claire walked slowly through the small park near her apartment, sunlight filtering through new leaves as her son slept against her chest in a lightweight carrier. He had grown heavier, warmer, solid in a way that still amazed her. Every breath he took felt like a quiet miracle she no longer questioned. Life had settled, not into perfection, but into honesty. Her days were simple now, morning feedings, short walks, a few hours of consulting work she could do from her kitchen table, laptop open beside a mug of coffee that often went cold before she finished it. Evan Cole had kept his word. The role came with flexibility, respect, and something Claire hadn't felt in years: trust. He never pushed, never hovered. He checked in, offered help when she asked, and disappeared when she didn't. That, more than anything, had taught her what partnership was supposed to feel like. Nathan still existed, but only on paper and in scheduled increments. Supervised visits, court-approved messages, a man reduced to structure and limits. Claire didn't wish him harm. She simply no longer carried him with her. That was his consequence. One afternoon, Evan joined Claire on a bench near the playground. He brought coffee for her and a small stuffed animal for the baby, nothing extravagant, just thoughtful. "You look good," he said, not as a compliment but as an observation. Claire smiled. "I feel like myself again." They sat in comfortable silence, watching children chase each other across the grass. After a while, Evan spoke carefully. "I don't want to complicate your life." "You're not," Claire replied gently. He nodded, relieved. "Then I'll say this once and let you decide the pace. I care about you, not because of what you survived, but because of who you are now." Claire looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something warm unfold in her chest. Not urgency, not fear, just possibility. Months later, there was a small wedding. No headlines, no spectacle, just close friends, quiet vows, and a ring that felt like a promise instead of a possession. Claire wore a simple dress. Evan held her son in one arm as he said his vows, voice steady, eyes clear. "I choose you," he said, "every day." This time, the words didn't feel fragile. In the back row, Lena Brooks smiled softly, arms crossed, satisfaction written across her face. Dr. Reed attended too, nodding once at Claire like a man who had seen the end of a long fight. Nathan wasn't there. He read about the marriage weeks later in a public filing he didn't need to read. It stung, but it didn't destroy him. What destroyed him had already happened. Claire stood by the window that night, watching city lights shimmer as her son slept in his crib. Evan wrapped an arm around her waist, grounding, present. She thought back to the hospital room, the silence, the unanswered phone. That woman had survived on hope. This woman lived on truth. Claire rested her hand over her heart and whispered something she no longer needed to prove. "I'm safe." And for the first time, life answered back, not with chaos, not with pain, but with peace that stayed. As this story comes to a close, let me pause with you for a moment. And if you're still here with me right now, truly still here, then something in this journey has touched your heart in a quiet but real way. Stories like Claire's remind us that life doesn't always break us with noise. Sometimes it breaks us in silence, through neglect, through choices others make when we need them most. But as the Stoics taught long ago, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Claire couldn't control betrayal, illness, or loss, but she could control one thing: how she chose to respond. Healing, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, begins when we stop asking why this happened to me and start asking what kind of person this moment allows me to become. Claire didn't heal by revenge. She healed by truth, boundaries, and self-respect. And that lesson applies to all of us. Whether we're facing heartbreak, disappointment, or simply feeling unseen in our own lives. If this story resonated with you, it's because part of you understands this truth too. Peace comes when we stop chasing what hurts us and start protecting what matters. If this message spoke to your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that heal, not just entertain.